Welcome to Game 8 Reviews.
When fear surrounds you, where do you go from there? Do you look back on what has come before you, or do you march on to a different path? Capcom's long-running survival horror series, Resident Evil, has constantly reinvented itself over the years. Recent outings like Resident Evil 7 brought the mainline series of games to a new perspective of grindhouse horror, while the remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3 brought new life to classic undead nightmares. The 8th major entry in the series, Resident Evil Village, was released on May 7, 2021, marking the 25th anniversary of the prolific franchise. It is currently available on Windows PC, Google Stadia, and all major consoles except the Nintendo Switch. As the final chapter of Ethan Winters' story, it promises to celebrate all of what has come before, tease what is possible after, and scare your socks off along the way. But does the weight of expectations from all sides present too much of a high goal for even Resident Evil to reach? From survival horror, to a campy thriller, to high-octane action, Resident Evil means many different things to many different people. Now, Game 8 Information Station is here to examine Resident Evil Village and figure out whether it lives up to its lofty goals, or will it be buried alive by its own ambitions and struggles to survive. Fear runs in the family. Set 3.5 years after the events of Resident Evil 7, Ethan and Mia Winters have tried to live the rest of their lives in peace and normalcy. But peace in a Resident Evil game never lasts, as Ethan is thrown into another nightmare, lost in a shadowy village somewhere in Eastern Europe, hoping to find his kidnapped daughter Rose and survive whatever new terrors await him. His grueling adventure uncovers an even grander mystery, revealing the many secrets the village has inside its snow-filled streets and castle furnishings, with some connecting to the overall narrative of the franchise. Players who plan to dive into the long-standing series starting with Resident Evil Village may find themselves a bit lost to some narrative threads that connect to the overarching story, but Village still keeps it vague enough that it isn't heavily reliant on past knowledge and can be enjoyed in its own terms. There's even an option to view a quick recap of the previous game's events to provide most of the context needed before jumping into the main campaign.
Lycans and gentlemen, we thank you for waiting. And now let the games begin!
Resident Evil Village carries the series staple of having seemingly simple but engaging survival stories that turn grandiose with a side of cheese and self-awareness in varying amounts. The allies and enemies that Ethan meets along the way are well defined and full of personality. Not only does Ethan Winters have to deal with a horde of werewolf-like creatures, killer dolls, a peculiar merchant, and more, Chris Redfield returns as well, keeping a close eye on the wary and weary father. Chris has replaced his boulder-punching machismo with an aura of distrust and a permanent scowl. The veteran protagonist has his own journey in the midst of Ethan's, and occasionally shows up throughout the story to warn of the path Ethan has set himself towards on. Even the simplest of village folk, despite being the most dispensable and the obvious first ones to go to the chopping block, leave a brief but effective impression on Ethan's journey. The rest of the cast are enjoyably cheesy and over the top, whether they try to be menacing, frightening, or just downright disgusting. The accidental marquee mascot of the game, Lady Dimitrescu, exemplifies this by being a towering figure both literally and figuratively, masking her blood-starved beastliness and cannibalistic cruelty with a veil of nobility and decorum. However, the same level of praise can't be said for the main protagonist, Ethan Winters, who keeps most of his dim-witted naivete from Resident Evil 7 but doesn't really receive much character development throughout most of Village's 9 to 10 hour campaign. While some late-game revelations provide context to a few of Ethan's experiences, with a surprising amount of nuance and self-awareness, Ethan still stands out as being the least memorable character in the game. It doesn't help as well that it feels like over 50% of his lines are still him asking what the heck is going on.
What's going on? What's going on? What is going on around here? What the hell? 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 What the hell is going on? What? 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 Can someone please tell me what the hell is going on here?
We don't know.
Despite his character, Ethan's journey is what redeems him in the end. The simple trait of being a worried father, willing to risk life and limb for even a hint of a chance of his daughter's survival, is enough for any undead heart to liven up and want to see him push through. While Resident Evil Village marks the end of the father's story, it also teases the possibility that the daughter will later take up the mantle of leading the next game, and that there are still more secrets that the world of Resident Evil has yet to uncover. Fear has never looked and felt this good. We are reviewing Resident Evil Village on a PlayStation 5, and not only does it showcase the graphical fidelity of next-gen consoles, but also Capcom's stellar art direction and their mastery over their proprietary RE engine. On PlayStation 5, load times in Resident Evil Village are practically instant. Its use of the DualSense controller's haptic feedback feature has each weapon have a different level of tension on the trigger buttons, so firing one gun literally feels different from another, as well as other minor touches that enhance the immersion. Playing through the campaign in 1080p resolution with either ray tracing on or off is smooth as silk with a near locked 60 FPS. There were only a few moments where the frame rate dropped a bit, and it was during situations wherein a lot of action was going on, like this reservoir sequence. But even then, it was near unnoticeable and barely made a dent in the overall experience. Character models are lifelike and highly detailed with animations that are natural and believable, even for the unnatural beasts and unbelievable monsters in the game. Maggie Robertson's portrayal of everyone's favorite tall vampire lady is delightfully flamboyant along with the rest of the rich and dynamic cast. Even Ethan Winters' bland personality has a bit of color with the occasional cheesy delivery.
I'm sick of bugs.
The environmental detail is a standout with a variety of small details littered throughout the various locales. Resident Evil Village continues the smart and artistically remarkable use of contrasting light and dark in its level design, similar to previous games like RE7 and RE2 Remake, this time taking advantage of the frigid gothic setting. The near constant overcast weather lends to darker shadows, thick fog, and piercing light rays to emphasize the game's gloomy and ominous atmosphere. For those seeking to really highlight the game's technical feats, there is also a built-in photo mode feature, as well as the option to turn off different HUD elements. The only noticeable technical flaw is that some objects, particularly foliage, lose a bit of their polish upon closer inspection, while the only noticeable artistic flaw is that the game's original soundtrack didn't leave much of a lasting impression, but to each their own in that regard. With Fear looking this good, who needs the brief respite of a safe room? Resident Evil Village retains much of the revamped gameplay that Resident Evil 7 introduced back in 2017, like its first-person perspective and crafting system. But it also takes an equal amount of inspiration from its even older sibling, Resident Evil 4, like with its economy system and item management. Players can move faster, aim quicker, and have more tools at their disposal to make mincemeat out of the army of monsters, all itching to get a taste of Ethan's flesh and blood. Resident Evil Village features many other returning mechanics mixed together to form an experience that's both new and familiar. Instead of limited item slots that have players think twice on what they want to bring, Village directly lifts from RE4's grid inventory system. Weapons, first aid kits, ammo, and other miscellaneous items can be placed in a grid in any position, as long as they can fit within it, while key items, treasures, and crafting materials are stored separately. This allows for both the player and the story to continuously progress, as there's less need to leave behind items or return to places they've already explored just because they couldn't get that one ammo pack left in a room. This also brings back that feeling of wanting to organize your items to make sure everything fits just right, and the satisfaction of seeing your items neatly arranged to your preference, emanating an almost Tetris-like minigame.
Why are you doing all this?
Why, it's all part of our first-class customer service. Please do come again soon.
Then there's the Duke, who serves as Village's mysterious merchant that you'll be frequently be in contact with to buy weapons, upgrades, and sell items to. Defeating enemies as well as being a careful scavenger rewards you with bags of coins that act as the game's currency. There are also hidden treasures to find and sell to the Duke for some additional cash. Ammos and health items are fairly limited, so a simple crafting system is there for you to make additional items, as long as you have the necessary blueprint and materials for it. All this is in service to the way you'll be exploring through the game's gothic environment. The titular village is what you'll be moving to and from, acting as a sort of hub that opens up new areas as you progress. While this setup creates the sense of a large interconnected world to explore, the village does lose some of its charm by the latter half of the game, when there is little incentive to keep exploring and a diminishing sense of dread and danger with no enemies around. A lack of difficulty may also be a factor in this, as even on harder settings, there's always enough ammo to go around, and a considerate enemy AI that will rarely overwhelm even a series beginner. While there are a fair amount of side activities to do in Resident Evil Village, like optional areas to reveal, treasures to plunder, puzzles to solve, and even optional mini-bosses to empty your ammo reserves for, the overall experience may have benefited if they were better spaced out, with an occasional random werewolf attack to keep Ethan's trigger finger at the ready at all times. That's not to say the game fails to sink its teeth into you. Resident Evil Village is a roller coaster ride from start to finish. It delivers its story and gameplay with a terrific pace that regularly pulls the rug from under you, bringing a new type of horror experience for you to enjoy. While its scares are few and far between, and its default difficulty may leave some wanting a bit more resistance, it makes up for it with engaging scenarios and an enjoyably campy vibe to suspend your disbelief in. A big part of what makes Resident Evil games have such a replayable experience is its encouragement for subsequent playthroughs and overcoming challenges to unlock new weapons and modes to take revenge on all the monsters that gave players such fright and despair. After finishing the campaign for the first time, Resident Evil Village offers a New Game Plus mode that lets you start a new campaign with all the weapons, items, and currency you've accrued from a previous playthrough. It also offers an even harder difficulty setting for those wishing to really test their mettle, with Village of Shadows mode that has Ethan die from just one hit from almost all attacks and barely any resources to scrounge upon. The Mercenaries brings back the classic extra mode of past games, providing a more arcadey experience to Resident Evil Village's combat. This mode has you reach for a high score by defeating enemies in a series of different levels from the main campaign while under a timer. You can upgrade your weapons, extend the timer, as well as take in permanent buffs like an increase in damage output, movement speed, or ammo capacity to make the experience even more hectic. While the total number of stages leaves much to be desired, with only 4 unique stages and the rest being harder variations of them, it is a nice change of pace and a neat piece of side content that showcases Village's gameplay even more. There are also various challenges that range from achieving certain gameplay milestones, completing a playthrough of the campaign in under a certain amount of time, to obtaining all of the hidden collectibles found in the game. These challenges reward credits that can be spent in the game's extra content shop to unlock concept art, infinite ammo on all weapons, viewable models of the various characters and items in the game, as well as cool secret weapons like an assault rifle, a rocket pistol, and this. Whether it's a way to get up close and personal with your favorite tall vampire lady, or turning the game into an arcade shooter, or being able to wield an elegant weapon for a more civilized age, Resident Evil Village has a variety of ways to entice you to keep playing and face your fears. Resident Evil Village is an excellent game. That much is for sure. The story, while simple, is a roller coaster ride full of exciting ups and downs, with a satisfying conclusion to Ethan Winters' adventures. Its graphics is a dazzling fireworks show that forms a beautiful tapestry of extreme violence and gore, and its gameplay is a solid interpretation, mixing the best of what the previous games have offered, bringing it all together to form a nightmarish carousel of the different ways the franchise has defined fear. But the one glaring aspect Resident Evil Village has against those praises is that it is a jack of all types of evil, but a master of none of it. It's taken a lot of inspiration from past games, but never really does enough to supersede any of them in any aspect. In the end, the game left us with a feeling of wanting more. Specifically, wanting to play past titles that have better scares, had more interesting puzzles, a tighter and more varied combat system, and even a better story. All the parts that make up Resident Evil Village are good in their own right, but don't really blend into a cohesive whole that would make up a clear identity for the game. And without that clear sense of identity, Fear is left without a face to remember. But that is to lose the forest for the trees, as Resident Evil Village embraces its legacy, faults and all. It carries on the series' tradition of embracing fear by being a love letter to the franchise's diversity of tackling different genres of horror and constantly reinventing itself. It does this by being a theme park celebrating Resident Evil. You have a roller coaster ride of actions and thrills. You explore through a haunted house hoping to find the way out, and you frantically try to survive a crazy river ride. All this is connected by a central plaza where you can do the other little side activities for you to enjoy as you go from one ride to the other. See where we're going with this? Its holistic perspective sees the series as greater than the sum of its parts. It stands as a testament of the nightmares of old instead of recapturing them. It is a Resident Evil game that fans from all eras of the series as well as newcomers may enjoy, whether they yearn to be terrified, puzzled, or be filled with adrenaline. It may not be the best, but it honors the best the series has done so far, and it promises a bright future amidst the fog. Resident Evil means many different things to many different people, and so Resident Evil Village is a celebration of its legacy of fear. And that is why we give the game a final score of 9 out of 10. With the announcement of the Gold Edition that includes the release of a hefty DLC expansion featuring a new third-person mode of the story campaign, new playable characters like Chris Redfield and Lady Dimitrescu in the Mercenaries mode, and a story expansion called Shadows of Rose, Resident Evil Village is set to continue celebrating the franchise's roots in more ways than what the base game has already provided. So for those of you that are more patient, we recommend waiting for the Gold Edition that will come out on October 28, 2022. Additionally, Resident Evil Village is also planned to have a Mac OS release sometime in late 2022, presumably coinciding with the release of the Gold Edition. And that marks the end of our review for Resident Evil Village, a great game for fans new and old, and encapsulates all of what the series has been and what it plans to be in the future. But what do you think of Resident Evil Village? What is your favorite Resident Evil game and how does that compare to Village? Sound off in the comments section below. To keep up to date on all our upcoming reviews and other videos dedicated to all things gaming, be sure to subscribe to Game 8 Information Station. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.